Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to Sisterly. My name is Maryam Lemu. And with me on the set, as I promised, my friends would join me is...
Adeyemi, Aliu. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And...
Assalamu alaikum, Monsurat Vincent.
Assalamu alaikum, Lateefah, Adeyemi.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're all with me on this set and that we'll be sharing our personal experiences, our opinions, and hopefully share tips as well with members of the audience, our guests, our viewers at home. And inshallah, we pray this serves as a blessing for all of us. First, we did promise you that we would be talking about marriage on this episode. Marriage here, we're talking about marriage between a man and a woman. We all know that marriage is sunnah, obviously. Marriage, by the time we choose to get married, we've completed half of our faith. However, marriage is not compulsory. And it's so funny, a lot of people assume that in Islam we must get married. Marriage is not compulsory. However, once you decide to get married, your obligations are compulsory. You have rights and responsibilities that you must fulfill to your spouse. And of course, when these rights are not being filled, then you can opt out. Obviously, it's highly discouraged, disliked for us to get a divorce, but it is an option. Now, what is the objective of getting married? Let's talk about that. In your opinion, what is the point? Why do we get married?
Wow, really? Marriage is supposed to be like, it's an institution that is held in the very highest esteem. And for companionship, yes, that's one of the obvious reasons. If you want somebody you want to be able to share jokes with, have children if you're able to, run together, play together, enjoy yourselves, you know, somebody you can actually trust, depend on. When you get it right, it's actually very good. So it's something everybody should look forward to.
Absolutely. Any additional comments with regard to marriage? Why? What is the objective?
I'll say that since Allah has ordained it, it's a will of Allah. Yes, and it's for companionship, it's to promote harmony, to raise families, for intimacy, it's to have someone to talk to, someone to share your feelings and thoughts with, and other things.
Absolutely. And it is described that you are like a garment to your spouse. Monsurat, what would you say that means to you? What does it mean to be a garment?
To be a garment, like to use the word rightly, to be a protector, to complement me. I mean, when you're wearing a beautiful garment, for instance, now it's complimenting you, it's bringing out your beauty. So when I have a spouse who is a garment to me, in the true sense of it, he compliments me. And then we can work hand in hand. He can help protect me, you know, so, you know, it helps bring out the beauty in me. He doesn't have to expose my weakness. And I think that's what Allah means by when he says, the spouse should be garments to each other.
To each other, absolutely. Now, marriage is sunnah. We've said that. And there are so many rewards and benefits to being married. However, just because you can afford to get married, just because you are in love, or you feel, you know, I just want to be married, when is it right to get married? Lateefah, what would you say? When is the right time to get married?
I would say when you're emotionally ready. One, you're ready to abide by the rules of marriage. You're ready to fulfill the obligation.
Absolutely.
You're ready to give up things for the one that you call your own. You're ready to...
What do you mean give up? Do you mean like...
Okay, well, we have certain habits. We have so many things that we enjoy doing. And such may not be acceptable to your spouse.
Absolutely.
So in marriage, most of the time you have to make sacrifices and give up some things that you enjoy doing.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And if I may add to that, you know, like you rightly said, when it comes to the institution of marriage, it is a sunnah, it is highly recommended. So you don't go into it because everybody is going into it.
Exactly.
Islam did not define any particular age for marriage. So you cannot say because she's 10 or because she's 20, she has to get married. You need to be ready for the commitment. Because once you are in it, there are the rights of the husband and the rights of the wife. So are you ready to meet those rights as a man and as a woman. If you're not ready for it, then you shouldn't go into it.
Absolutely. And there's so much pressure in the society generally put on people who are not married. You must get married. You've reached the age, your biological clock is ticking. And obviously, it becomes very uncomfortable. I mean, people really get miserable due to the kind of pressures. What else can you add to what they've said?
It's a big deal, really.
Yeah.
Because really, we have a lot of people rushing into marriage. You want to have a society wedding. You just want to be married because you want to be a missus. Exactly. You just want to be married because you just want... Other people are doing it. Yeah. It's a huge responsibility. Absolutely. And if you speak to those that have been married, those that have successful marriages today, they will tell you that it is not... There's no ABC guide to it. Absolutely. You have to, what applies to you wouldn't necessarily apply to Monsurat, wouldn't apply to Lateefah or me. So you have to be ready to make some sacrifices, right? So it's an emotional journey. A friend of mine said to me yesterday night that just like bearing children and raising children, marriage is like sowing a fruit.
Sowing?
Yes,
sowing
sowing a fruit. So when you sow, you must nurture that fruit.
Absolutely.
And
like a garden.
Exactly.
Crops.
You must make sure that you feed that fruit the right things to make sure it grows properly and it's sustained.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, a lot of people have wish lists before they get married. So once you've said, okay, I have everything now right, and I feel it's time for me to get married. Some people have a long wish list of things they want from a prospective spouse. What do you think about this, having a wish?
Well, I think the idea is it's not too bad to have a wish list. But what is important is that you have a realistic list.
God bless you. I love that word.
Yes. Beautiful.
You have to be real.
You need to have a
Beautiful.
realistic list.
Exactly.
And I say this is probably one of the reasons why you have a lot of marriages going down the way it is going. So ab initio, the lady says he must do this, he must do that.
This size, this height, this complexion.
So your spouse cannot be perfect. Right. It's not all about what it's going to bring to the marriage. It's about what you are also willing to give to the marriage. Exactly. So when you have all this high expectation and you're expecting a single human being to meet them all, which in most cases is not really possible.
Of course,
right?
of course.
Sometimes the guy pretends to be able to meet your expectation because he desperately needs to have you. But you know what? He might not even be able to feel 1/10 of it. So I think it's best to yes, have a list because we are human beings. Even Allah specifies those we can marry, those we cannot marry, the corrupt one for the corrupt ones, the pious ones for the pious ones. So there's nothing bad in having a list, but make it very realistic. Don't go out there to change someone to be what you want the person to be. Look at the fellow. Can I accept this person in the next 10, 20 years?
Yes.
Will I still be faithful to this person throughout the marital life? Those are the key questions, are the key things to put on ground, and then less pressure on yourself from day one.
Exactly. So you have to be the right person first. You have to make sure that before your to-do list gets so long and so heavy and burdened, you are actually that person. You have the right qualities to start with. And most likely, if you have the right qualities, you'll be able to attract the right type of person. That's also very relevant. I appreciate your contributions. Now, in today's society, I know from my personal experience, from my counseling sessions with a lot of newly married couples, you ask them literally, sometimes within the first month of marriage, oh, how is married life? And it's okay. There is this anticlimax. There are huge expectations. And then suddenly this reality hits. It's not what you expected. And you touched upon that slightly. Sometimes what you mentioned could be part of the reason why, because you had unrealistic expectations to start with. My dear Lateefah, what would you say are the main reasons why a lot of marriages fail today?
Most people go into marriage because of the pressure and not because they are not ready.
Absolutely, yeah.
Marriage is like a parcel. Until you open it, you don't know what it entails. So when you open it, there are so many unexpected things that you meet. And now dealing with those things is difficult for some people. Yes. So when such unexpected things happen, and you don't know the right way to handle it, you don't know who to talk to. Most people are surrounded by, especially I'm not passing the buck, but women, we do, tend to surround ourselves with some people that won't give us genuine advice. So I think it's another issue that, that leads to failed marriages. Yes. Yeah. Then impatience, intolerance, and, not understanding perfectly the person that you're getting married
Absolutely.
to. So the first thing is, after prayer, you try to understand the person. What works for A doesn't work for B. So when life happens, it's about, you to find the balance. Which is not easy.
Absolutely.
But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
absolutely.
It's
great.
Easy,
yes, thank you. Bimpe, are any more contributions to why marriages fail, why they don't work?
You need to understand what you're getting into. What are you willing to sacrifice in this marriage? And are you willing to go all the way? In as much as we want it to work, I know divorce is frowned at, discouraged in our deen, but it happens. If Mr. A has a fault that you think you can live with, he snores, when he takes out the toothpaste, he takes it out from the middle and he's what's this? If it's something that you can actually walk through, so long as he's a Muslim and he fears Allah and he loves you.
So pick your battles.
Love is very important. If the love is still there, I think the marriage can be saved. But for the failed marriages we have today, there are lots of things that could be
going wrong.
That could be the reason. Maybe the husband just suddenly fell out of love, or the husband or the wife fell out of love, or their deen wasn't so strong when they got into the marriage. So understanding what they need to give up or how they need to make things work was not there. Or we have third parties. So many factors. So many factors. So,
I think that's thing to do with falling out of love. We'll touch upon it soon. But that's a very important point. I think additionally, the most important thing is going into it with unrealistic expectations. I think that's one. A lot of parents send their children off, put pressure for them to get married, but they don't equip them with all the tools, all the skills they need to succeed at marriage. Some of us grow up and see our parents have been married 40 years. But what made the marriage work? How did it endure and survive the test of time? You just send them off without giving them the tools that they need to make it succeed.
I just had a point here. I think communication is also one thing that is missing nowadays.
Teaching how to communicate effectively.
Don't communicate. So he has this habit you can't stand. Are you talking to him about it? Did you let him know how bad it worries you? For him, it's just pressing the toothpaste in the middle. There's nothing to that. For you, you can't stand that. Oh, he's snoring. Can you get seek medical help about it? You need to let your spouse know how badly you cannot stand that habit of his. So couples need to communicate. Clearly, if it's the sex area, the intimacy area, you need to let him know where the exact issue is. Because one key thing about couples, if you do counsel them, is that the main thing that probably leads to the divorce, you never get to hear it. They talk about every other thing for you, but the key thing worrying that marriage, they never get to voice it out. And when they eventually do, is at the point where both of them have made up their mind to go over. So I think communication is key in marriage.
There's a survey conducted that says that by the time couples seek help to try and fix their marriage, it's about 5 to 7 years too late by the time they actually go out there to seek help. And unfortunately, I think one of the other things is the attitude towards the marriage. How do you see marriage? For me, one of the biggest things I experienced when I got married was the shock that I grew up in a home where my parents showed so much love to one another. It was literally a perfect marriage, in my opinion, because I never saw them fight. They never argued. They never quarreled. So I thought, that's what I'm going in for. And I was in love with my husband and expected things to be exactly the way. So that false expectations was one. I wasn't equipped that fights will occur. By the time we had our first fight, literally 2 weeks into the marriage, I asked for a divorce. Because why? I was like, okay, this marriage isn't going anywhere. Let's just call it quits, because you just don't fight in marriage. That's one of the things. So your attitude towards marriage. It took me 6 years to reach a stage where I was ready to make the marriage work. For 6 years, we were fighting, terrible fights, quarreling. I actually reached a stage where I hated my husband. I felt those terrible emotions. And divorce was on my mind so much. However, for me, the turning point was when I made a decision to be committed for life. that I'm committed for life. I'm going to fight for this marriage to work. I'm going to guard it jealously, like the garden that you mentioned, like a crop that you will nurture, protect, remove weeds, and make sure that you put things, add value to the relationship. So not having that attitude. For me, I always said, my grandchildren one day will hear stories of how my relationship, yes, and they lived happily ever after. That was my hope. Yes, that was my hope.
Can't remove the fact that in our society of today, the religious leaders still need to play a big role.
Absolutely.
Like we all say, everybody puts pressure on you, which is in every aspect of Nigeria. No matter where you come from.
In the world, even.
You're in your mid-20s. In Africa more. You're in your mid-20s, you're in your early 30s. Don't talk about the 40s at all. You should settle down. But nobody talks to you about the marriage itself.
Exactly.
Nobody tells you what to expect.
The premarital counseling.
Exactly.
We need that.
And then you eventually find this good man, this good Muslim, this Muslim man or woman. And then you go try to settle down. Nobody also gives you a course on that, or probably talks you through it. These are the expectations. I know you have your wish list.
Yes.
Please,
Received.
Exactly. So you don't know really what to expect. And then even when you go into it, we hardly seek marriage counselors' help. It's something not too common in our environment. Even when you have friends who are in that line, you hardly think of being their patient. You hardly want to go and consult them. So these are avenues we need to look at properly. Prepare people not just for the wedding, which we are all guilty of.
Exactly.
Not just the wedding, but the marriage proper.
Another thing is it will be good if people will discover themselves first.
Absolutely.
Because that leads to other issues in marriage, like the husband not supporting the wife's type of career choice.
Right.
So if you had discovered yourself before going into marriage, you will know that, okay, this man supports my vision. He shares the same vision with me, and
he understands.
He understands what I intend to go into. He will support me. He will compliment me, and so that's another thing. So we should encourage people to discover themselves first.
The introspect.
Get
yourself in order.
Get to know yourself.
Your personal Qibla.
Know yourself. Then you now know the right type of person to go for when trying to choose a spouse.
If I can add to that, that works, yes. But in some cases, you agreed to be a housewife when you were courting. You married somebody that's very comfortable, and you agreed that I would stay at home and nurture and take care of the kids. But along the line, you just discovered that you're very good in making dresses,
crafts,
in doing things, skills. Arts and crafts, baking, and you actually do it from home. And then you tend to have a when you were doing it on a low scale basis, it was okay. But when you now had a large clientele, it became a problem. You didn't discover yourself before because you didn't know you had that talent. So I think there has to be we can't just go one way. We have to look at it's really broad. So it depends on understanding, really.
Have a point.
I have a friend that when she got married, of course they agreed, her husband agreed that she was going to stay at home. Then he paid for her to go to catering school in Switzerland, top notch. Then she started having big clients, baking, making serious money. And the husband said, I paid for the baking school. Please stay at home. It's my money because it's taking your time.
Wow.
And she said, okay, no problem.
Wow. I think effective communication, though, is so key.
I was going to say that. It goes back
because you build a bond, a mutual respect and understanding.
You already gave your word. You already accepted not to work. So when you now discover that, okay, I enjoy doing this, I'm passionate about it, and you want to start doing it. So you just find a way to communicate it to him. You know, gradually just appeal to the king in him, gradually.
It's still communication, really.
So
if you get it right, it will work.
Exactly. Exactly.
Eventually.
I think what you said is so perfect, that there's no one-size-fits-all formula for success in marriage, but you can gather tips, especially when you watch others who are married, talk to them, what are their best practices, and what mistakes did they make? Because that is so critical. Learning not to fall into those holes that others have fallen into. And inshallah, Allah will help. And of course, you mentioned spirituality as well. If you're prayerful about it, it's such an important part. But communication is really the key, and sometimes the key to the failure of marriage, ineffective communication. But we'll take a break right now. And when we come back, we shall continue on marriage, inshallah. So please join us. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Maryam Lemu and welcome back to Sisterly. With me on the show is Bimpe, Monsurat and Lateefah. We've been talking about marriage so far, and we will be talking about more technical things right now, that when things start getting nasty in the marriage. Conflict is a reality, as we've already shared. This is sometimes comes as a surprise, like it did for me early in my marriage. However, it features no matter what. However good you think your marriage is, it's so important that you know how to resolve conflict, how to handle it. What I do love is that even during the time of the Prophet, the Prophet's wives argued with the Prophet. So it's really important to establish that arguments are okay. Right. Conflict is okay. Right. The way you argue is actually where the danger zone is. That's when you get into the red area. In Islam, even in the battlefield, there are etiquettes of fighting where we are told rules. You do not kill children, women, even harming animals. You don't even destroy the water source. So when you think that even in the battlefield, there are rules, there are guidelines to follow, imagine this very important area. Think about the way we fight with our spouses. I know my fights with my spouse were nasty. They were dirty. I went for the jugular. I hit below the belt. I wanted blood. It was really bad. Right now I can talk about it and laugh about it, but as I said before, certain emotions I went through were really terrible, like despise, disgust. I would feel hatred towards my spouse. And when you are angry, when you are reaching that stage, it's really important that you watch out for those warning signs, because that's when you know your marriage is on the rock. Right. Having said that, what advice can we share with one another on etiquettes and guidelines when things get hot in the relationship? Lateefah, what would you say when the argument is getting heated, the temperature is rising?
Well, I would say that someone should be patient for the other. You shouldn't argue at the same time. If the man is angry, you should try not to be angry at the same time. It's easier said than done, but we can try. Yes, I know.
So when he
said
says
that. So
terrible things to you, what do you suggest?
Okay, well, we all have different coping mechanisms. Sometimes maybe you keep quiet or just listen, quietly. Some people can, take notes. As he's saying it, you'll be writing it down. You'll be writing it down. So when the anger subsides, you can now discuss with him that, at so point, you said so and so to me, and that way we'll feel sorry.
So keeping quiet is not saying I accept what you have said.
No, it's not. You don't have to, yes.
Agreeing to be more mature.
Agreeing to be more, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also told us that the one who gives up arguments is a good one. So it's better when you don't argue with, at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Monsurat, I like that because I know there's this quote that says, save your anger for another day. Because it gives you a chance to calm down, articulate your thoughts, and then be able to speak without adding to the flame.
True.
Yes. What would you share as tips or guidelines, etiquettes of when things get hot?
Exactly. So I think I'll go back to reality TV show again. Conflict is part of any union, marriage inclusive. And so it's bound to happen because you are two different individuals from two different backgrounds. Yes. However, like it's always advised, you can do everything together. You can play together. You're advised to eat together. You're advised to talk together. You're advised to sleep together. But don't ever get angry at the same time. When he's angry, try not to be angry. Like I said, try not to be angry.
It's not easy.
It's not an easy thing. But you've got to be conscious. Surprisingly, Islam encourages even the man to take the first step towards reconciliation, not the woman. But where we come from, you are the woman, you are the weaker sex, you are the one that should go begging. So because of the woman in you, because of Islam, because like we said, you need to be submissive to Almighty Allah. Exactly. And you cannot be submissive to Almighty Allah if you're not submissive to your husband. For the sake of that, for the sake of the kids.
For the sake of the marriage.
I mean, like Almighty Allah said in Surah Rum, I think around verse 21, where he said it is one of the signs of Almighty Allah that he has created mates for us among ourselves. And that we may find tranquility in them.
Peace and tranquility.
I think for me that's just the key thing, because you want a peaceful home. And where there is peace, there is always love. There is always happiness. Those 5-letter words, HAPPY, as short as that word is, you don't want to joke with it. So because you have that at the back of your mind, you have you have to control your anger.
Yeah.
You can't afford to get angry at the same time with your husband.
It goes back to that mindset. What attitude, how do you view the marriage? Once you've got that commitment for life, you're ready to make some sacrifices, compromise, but at the same time, pick your battles. Which ones do you fight?
If I can quickly add to that.
Absolutely.
Quickly.
Yeah.
I wish we had this kind of program back in the day when I got married. Maybe I would still be married today, you know, because it's very good advice.
Absolutely.
You know, when you know you get angry easily like me, and if I had this kind of advice then, maybe things would have turned out better for me, you know. I definitely know that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me another opportunity to venture into that institution, the sacred institution called marriage, I would do it better.
Well, it's so perfect you mentioned that, because actually that's what I wanted to talk about next, is that we have some of our own habits that affect the marriage in a terrible way. Yes. Because you did mention, everybody has their own personality. These are two separate individuals. If the tongue and the teeth fight when they are so close, living together, they don't have a choice. What about human beings who have minds of their own? Right. What kind of habits do you think, in addition to, as you said, anger, which is absolutely important habit that one has to break, what other habits do you think affect the marriage in a negative way that we bring into the relationship? Because many people will say, this is how I am. I'm sorry, this is how I grew up. Everybody knows me this way. However, it can actually be detrimental to the relationship. Right. What other habits are affecting relationships?
I think when you introduce too many third parties into the relationship, it tends to give it a dent right from the onset.
What about your personal habits?
You're the one talking to the third party. So that's you're talking too much about you're married to other people.
I get it.
Right.
Like
so
sharing your personal relationship with outsiders.
Yes.
Absolutely,
right.
I get it.
So I mean, that's one of the things, that's the key reasons why marriages die today. Apart from the anger, pock-nosing. Yeah. Pride also, pride. I'm this, I'm that, I'm the son of this, I'm the daughter of this, you came to marry me from my father's home, my father had 10 yards, this and that before you came to. Right, so, but you need to be humble, that's the word. Because if we are able to bow down in front of Almighty Allah that we do not see, but we know is our creator, you know, Allah said, after me, it is your husband. So we must also know how to bottle up our pride. Yeah. Like I said, if I had sisterly TV show then, maybe, but wala.
Lateefah, what else do you have to add about our personal habits that affect the relationship in an adverse way?
Okay, being disrespectful is another thing.
Absolutely.
Yes. So you should show much respect
in how you speak.
In how you speak, in your manners to your husband. And,
Exactly. Now, many complain that after the marriage, sometimes soon, sometimes later, things start to fizzle off. The spark starts to die. No more sensation of, oh, I'm in love with my spouse, or those feelings, those emotions that were very, very strong before you got married. Now, what kind of tips can you share when that boredom kicks in, you fall into a routine? I know this quote that I love, water that sits still starts to smell. Cool. If you let the relationship become stagnant, you do not allow fresh water to come in and flow in the relationship, it starts to cause a lot of problems. And unfortunately, sometimes it can actually be the cause of infidelity in the relationship. And of course, it can lead to divorce. So what advice can you share on how to rekindle, Monsurat, the sparks, how to bring back that excitement in the relationship?
Okay, you know, like Bimpe rightly said, that marriage is a garden.
Yes.
Which you need to water constantly.
Absolutely.
That says it all. So to make your marriage the same way, you call it habit from day one, you've got to ensure that you constantly spice it up like you rightly said.
With what?
Okay, you could go on vacation. And when I mean vacation, it doesn't have to be outside the country.
Because some will say not with this economical crunch. Yes.
Same house, same four-corner house, same food, you know, same routine.
Yeah.
You could just be a weekend outside your home.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be
simple
anything
things.
expensive. You know, the normal routine, most family, you wake up, cook, go to work if you're a career woman. If not, take care of the children. The husband is back, you make his meal. And
watch TV,
and the same thing.
You fall into bed.
Intimacy is also the same.
Yes,
no spice,
no spicing.
nothing new.
Because this thing is not the way I want it again.
Exactly.
You want to think of introducing new ideas. Go out of the base. Go out of your regular
comfort zone.
Comfort zone.
Yeah,
go
exactly.
to a hotel for a weekend.
I love that.
I agree with you.
We do it a lot.
Yes. Even if you want to sleep outside, you go for an evening house.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything expensive.
Yeah.
You could be just the history next door. You don't have to cook the same meal every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Something as small as that. And of course, intimacy, which you rightly mentioned.
Yeah.
You've got to ensure that
there's variety.
Your partner.
Yes.
It's key.
Yeah.
And once you keep in touch with those tips, it helps you to maintain good marital relationship over the time.
I would like to say
we need to emphasize to our audience when she mentioned intimacy that everything is halal except what is haram.
Exactly.
And of course, what is haram is anal sex,
Right.
and sucking blood. God forbid, which I can't imagine how that will come up.
Right.
Yeah.
Other's everything else is free game.
is
So
free
nobody
games,
should feel that there are things they cannot do with their
your
spouse.
spouse.
What else would you give us tips to spice up the marriage?
Right. In spicing up, I remember the good times I had with my ex, and we used to go on a boat ride.
Oh, lovely.
In Lagos, you would go on a boat ride and you'd have a meal on the boat.
Nice.
Then we used to check in into hotels weekends. Then
Yes,
I would
I
come
love
back
it.
from work one day, I would call me and say, I'm taking you out for dinner. And I'll quickly read who's going to stay with the kids. We'll have to make time, for my husband. Then we go for dinner, I spice up, I look a little bit nice. Then, when you were talking about intimacy, I remembered a friend of mine actually. She had dressed up, she bought new negligee and candles all over all over the room. Then her husband came in, the AC was on, and she was expecting him to notice her new lingerie, the candles, the the dim lights. The guy just fell into bed. And she came to hold the phone and I said, what the? Can you imagine? I was so cold. I didn't talk to him for one day. I said, but you need to let him know now because that lingerie was expensive. She said she told him that.
Yeah. What you just mentioned is actually critical. There is this excellent book, 5 Love Languages. And this is such an important read. And honestly, audience, I ask you to find this book and read. And there's another book also called The 7 Human Needs. Find it or go online, look for it. But the 5 Love Languages helps. Why? Because there's a very strong possibility that for her, that's romantic.
Right.
For him, he didn't notice because that is not his love language. And if you read the book, it actually helps you know the different love languages out there so that you speak in the same love language. You could be giving Naira and he wants euros. Exactly. Somebody may consider quality time to be, come, let's sit and watch football. Let's watch soccer together. Whereas somebody else's love language is, come, let's sit together and talk.
Right.
So you need to know one's love language. Somebody's love language could be gifts, giving them little gifts, even little notes. And you may not know unless you try to understand or identify it. So those 2 books are absolutely great reads. You wanted to add something?
Yes, I would like to add that women should try to appear neat at all times. Try to be the woman that
keep yourself fresh.
Keep yourself go.
Fresh,
Yes, exactly.
Let
so
yourself
that
go.
You
Exactly.
see you over and over, you like to fall in love with the same
To
one.
what Bimpe has said, the
Lateefah.
male should also be understanding. Okay, so I don't want to add weight, but I've just finished having a baby.
Yeah.
I can't help
There's
that.
time.
Yeah.
I definitely will have some weight. I'm trying to make myself more beautiful, but you're not even noticing me. You need to compliment my effort. So you
exactly.
see,
Do it together with me.
Both ways.
Don't criticize me.
The extra effort I'm
Do
making
it with
to look
me.
beautiful for you.
Yeah.
So the male should also try and, sympathize with the females and
Exactly.
that will give us a better marriage, which we are all praying for.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Just as we come to the end, could you just share your own story maybe or something the Prophet ﷺ did that touched you, that you admired in how he related with his spouses, his wives? What is it that really touched you, Monsurat?
In the story of the Prophet, God the Prophet,
yes.
so we are humans.
Yeah.
And so I would love to talk about myself. I was fortunate enough to marry a man that is extremely understanding.
Yeah.
The first few years of marriage, the babies refused to come. But you need to see me, I was always he's always by my side.
Yeah.
He never allowed that to bother me. Even when I cried, people were like, what's your problem? Why are you crying? And even when I lament to friends, they're like, you don't need to bother. Your husband is not even bothered at all.
Yeah.
And so that gave me the confidence, that gave me the hope.
Yes.
That kept me alive. So you need to, the men should play their role.
Absolutely.
Support their wife. Like
Yeah.
Rasulullah marriage like a journey, you have your trying times. And when it comes, you need that man by your side. And of course, you need that woman by your side as well.
So your story of the prophet that touched you is that he kept his family.
Yes,
he was
kept
family
his family
first.
He was there for his family when it matters most.
Absolutely.
And the prophet will tell you, if you have a wife, don't even go to war. You know, so these are the extra effort the prophet made to ensure that the family,
comes
the
first.
union comes first.
Yes. Lateefah, what would you say is your touching story?
The hadith that was narrated by Sahih Buhari.
Yeah.
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to Aisha radiallahu anha's room, and she refused to open the door because she was annoyed. He actually got there late. So instead of leaving, he kept knocking on the door, and Aisha refused to open. So later, he now started saying endearing words to her. I love you.
Sweet talk.
Started reassuring her that, you know, at the end of it all, she opened the door and allowed him in. So through that, I learned that our men, they don't like to apologize, even when they are wrong. Some. Sorry, let me not pass the buck.
Some.
So, and the ego in them won't let, you know, some would have just walked away. That, okay, so what? She has closed the door. Okay, I'll come back another time. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam
made them feel wanted.
Made her feel wanted and waited till, you know, she opened the door.
And
so
then the sweet words
if our
as
men
well.
could apply that, you know, it will make marriage, you know, better.
All right. Bimpe, what would you say? Things or any example of what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did?
I actually cannot remember the hadith word for word, but I know there was I think a procession or a march going on, and you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we heard that he was a tall man, and Aisha was trying to see what was going on, so he put her on his shoulder, and you know, for her to be able to see well.
Exactly.
And he kept asking, "Are you okay? Have you been able to see what you want to see?" And she said, "No, not yet, just because she wants to still be on his shoulder." And he was patient enough to let her stay there. Patience is very important.
Actually, that story was that there were some Abyssinians in the mosque doing entertainment, sword fighting and spear entertainment. And he took her to see. So even doing things together, recreational things together, I think that's also a very important one. For me, what really touched me about the things the Prophet ﷺ said, like has been said, family comes first. He said after his prayers, his devotion to Allah, it's family. But also, we hear stories of the Prophet ﷺ bathing with his wife. You know, he's romantic. He would race with his wife. He's playful. He would do things that make you realize that, you know, Islam is such a beautiful religion. If we even follow the teachings of the Prophet, marriage can be so much fun, so beautiful, with the playfulness. But the other, on a more serious note, that the Prophet ﷺ allowed his wives to argue with him. And like we went back earlier and said, it's the manner of arguing. But to think the Prophet's wives argued with him, people would like, what? But they did. And it gives us an example that you can argue with your spouse, but it goes back to the manner. So all those examples, I think, are really, really beautiful when we think about how he lived his life and set an exemplary, as an exemplary role model for all of us and how we should live our married life as well. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. This is great. And inshallah, after the break, we shall conclude on this beautiful topic of marriage. Thank you for joining us on Sisterly. Please come back. Welcome back to Sisterly. Assalamu alaikum, viewers. We've been talking about marriage today, and we have come to the end of the show where we need to just recap some of the most important things that have been saying. What would you say would be your final advice that you would give someone on how to strengthen the marriage and how to make it work?
I think I would implore the young people out there and everybody with a struggling marriage. If they still love their spouse, if they still love in that marriage, if there is fear of God, and if there's no violence in the marriage, if there's nothing that cannot be handled in the marriage, they should seek for help. I mean, you can talk to the right people and you'll be shocked at what kind of advice would actually help you. Your marriage.
From the right people.
Right,
that's such a key, important word. Absolutely. Monsurat, what would you say? Parting advice for the audience.
Marriage is a sunnah, and a beautiful one for that matter. Please use your head. Don't let anybody push you into it if you are not set for it.
Yeah.
And pray for Allah's guidance.
Exactly. Absolutely. Lateefah?
Yes, pray for Allah's guidance. And that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think this thing that we mentioned earlier about being committed to the institution of marriage is so critical. For me, I'm in this for life. It's like Man U for life and so on. Me, my marriage is for life, inshallah. Being very prayerful. Pray for yourself, pray for your spouse, pray for the success of the marriage. And then, of course, handle fights with dignity. And that key word that was mentioned, respect. Make sure you do not do things that will create any kind of resentment, that will create, and you say words that cannot be taken back. Unfortunately, as we said, arguments are not what break marriages. It's bad manners in fighting that breaks a marriage. So watch yourself, watch your body language, watch the words that you utter, because there are some things that are just absolutely...
that you can take back.
Irreversible, right. Exactly. And then finally what we shared is how to see marriage as a beautiful garden that you nurture, you add value to. Weeds could be our own bad habits that would damage the soil, that would damage the crop. So first start with that introspect. Check yourself, see what you're doing that is affecting the marriage in an adverse way, and try and make sure you break your own bad habits before you point fingers and say, but you are. Start with your own faults. Whenever I'm in an argument with my husband, I start saying, I'm very sorry I did this. And so I really do soul searching. What did I do wrong to make this situation deteriorate? And then there are times where I actually didn't do anything wrong. He did. But that word sorry can put out the fire. So what I often would say is, I'm sorry we're having this argument. Now, I didn't say I did anything wrong, but I said sorry, which is a beautiful word that calms the heat in the relationship. Exactly. And then guard your marriage jealously. Don't let outsiders come in. Absolutely. Don't let others interfere in a negative way. Hang out with people who value the institution of marriage and talk about it. Read books on how to strengthen the relationship and get tips. There are thousands of tips online, millions of tips on how to spice up the marriage, because that is actually one of the most important areas, keeping the marriage fresh, making sure you do things and keep yourself for it. It's such a pleasure to talk about marriage. It's such a complicated, complex issue. It's so real. If it works, it's beautiful.
It is.
It gives you peace of mind.
It truly
gives
is.
you contentment
It
and true happiness. And that peace and tranquility that we've been promised in the Quran. Yeah. However, if you do it wrong, unfortunately, it can shatter families and you can do irreversible damage to yourself, to your children, to families. So try and make your marriage work in every way possible, and may Allah put His barakah in it.
Allahumma
Inshallah. Inshallah. All right, we've come to the end of this episode. We pray that you have learned something new, that you can add value and strengthen your relationship and your bond with your spouse, inshallah. Thank you, sisters, for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your fantastic contribution. And from all of us, yours,
Cicely.